quite some stuff, isn't it? Wait, I got distracted. It's gonna be so painful if she's basically reconvener Kaltsit, not the original, like with Gulliver and Levitine. Painful, but in a good way, and in a way that it maybe should be. And I think I forgot mod, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, first of all, let's just... Is it too early? Simple answer, kind of a little bit yes. I do think, as a huge Kaltsit fan, I think it's a little bit early. Like 1 year? One main chapter? 1 year? It's like a little early. I feel like they could have pushed it a little bit. Regardless of indeed where the story goes, because indeed I'm sure that it'll all be written out in the story and so on, right? It will be all written out in the story, that it all makes sense and so on. And I mean, obviously they're building towards it. End of chapter 15 ends with like, hey, we can probably actually revive her, right? So yes, for the full judgment, I obviously want to actually read the thing as usual. But as like a knee-jerk, simply how long it has been since she was killed off, I'm like, I think they could have let it go a little bit longer. Like in a meta sense, right? In a meta-narrative sense of actually having your players and readers go through like more time in real life before they get to reunite with a character that they love, I think can be a really strong thing to do. Obviously for CN it has been a full year, because in a way for global, sort of, you know, it's only been half a year, right? Because, you know, the time gap or whatever. So in a way, it's kind of almost weirdly like a shorter amount of time for global in that sense. But I think they could have made it go like further. Like they could have let it go for half a year more, or even if they went like a full 2 years, that I think would be like the upper end. I think that would be like the upper end if they made it go a full 2 years before they brought her back. So, indeed, my final judgment is reserved for when the actual event and everything and the story is out and I actually get to read it. Because obviously, you know, that's when you can actually make a full opinion on anything. But in like almost just a meta-narrative sense of like, and how long you actually in real life make your readers wait, I think they could have gone longer, like very easily. And I think it would have been like even a good thing to do. Like actually, you know, string people along a little bit more and she's like gone. Even if, yes, chapter 15 literally ends with the tease that, hey, we can probably bring her back. And obviously chapter 16 also ends with like a hint of, oh, we just made a big step towards maybe meeting the requirements to bring her back, right? Chapter 16 ends in that kind of situation. I think it's like just a tiny bit too early, kind of, you know? They weren't ever gonna keep her dead fully. That one I kind of knew, right? Well, at the very least, you know, by the end of chapter 15, I was aware of that. That was clear. But yeah, they could have, I think they could have kept her dead for a bit longer. And I think it would have been somewhat more interesting and maybe had even a little bit more weight to it. Now it is sort of, in a way, so fast that I feel like there's not quite as much weight to it as there could have been if they had waited a little bit longer. Even if they teased her coming back right at the end of chapter 15. So, and obviously I have some trust that, you know, it will actually work narratively quite well in the story that happens in chapter 17 and so on. But, you know, as just like a pure feels and vibes kind of thing, I would have maybe preferred a bit longer between chapter, like her dying and her coming back. So, and yeah, I also said Skybird that like 2 years probably would have been like, that would have been like getting towards the upper end, I think, of what they could have done. But 2 years would have been like really that would have been a significant that, oh, when she returns after 2 years, it's like a huge, that would be like a big, huge moment, right? Because obviously, yes, it is true that they are going clearly much faster pacing on this entire kind of act. On Act 3, the pacing in general is much faster, right? Where we're going through, a lot more things are happening way more faster because so many of the pieces of the puzzle are now in place after Act 2 that now many events, many main story chapters are going at a faster pace because like a lot of the setup has been done. So they can go at a faster pace. And I think that's why I'm not like super surprised. Well, first of all, I mean, fucking Kaltsit Altar was like one of the main things that was like really heavily hinted at before the stream, both by Hypergriff and like leakers and so on, right? This was like the main thing, right? So both because of that and also because of the pacing that the story has been going on in Act 3, I'm not like, in a way, in that sense, super surprised. While Act 2 was a lot slower on its pacing. And yeah, with like Act 2 pacing, it would have been 2 years, yeah. And with Act 3 pacing, it's instead a year. And I think the faster pacing is like, I think, a good thing. I think it would be silly to take a really slow pace in Act 3 when we have so many of the setup already done, right? It would be silly to do that. So in that way, it makes sense. You know? But first of all, I mean, I will be saving all my rolls, okay? I sure as hell will be saving all my rolls. It will be another case like Monster, where I'm going all in. Because look, I'm the fucking Kaltsit guy, right? I'm the Kaltsit guy. I have to keep, you know, I have to keep up the persona, the you know, character. I'm the Kaltsit guy. I should change my fucking profile picture to Kaltsit, let's be real. I have it as Shining, because at some point I just made it Shining. I should probably change it to like the Kaltsit Altar, you know? Maybe I'll do that when she releases. We'll do a rebrand. We'll rebrand when Kaltsit Altar hits global, and I'll change my profile picture and everything. But yeah, so I mean, I'm not like super surprised about the Kaltsit. I think it's a little early, but at the same time, the pacing of this arc is much faster. It was teased like right away at the end of chapter 15. So I'm not super shocked. And I mean, I like how she looks and everything, you know. I'm happy with the design and the sound and like the vibe that I'm getting off of her. And I'm also very interested to see on what kind of essentially character development she goes through in this. Because also another thing is, I realized this recently. I put this into the Discord at some point, I think, when we were discussing this. But all of the predecessors, I realized this thanks to the Friston EP that recently came out, which got me thinking about Friston and Preserver and all that stuff again. All the predecessors that we like have, all the predecessor characters who are active and like around in current day. So Doctor, Kaltsit, Friston, Preserver, and so on. These three, specifically, those are the main ones that we have like around, and then Priestess, you know, more recently. All of these, well, not all of the Priestess, not yet. But now, I think this is what's now happening with Kaltsit Altar as well. All three of them, Doctor, Preserver, Friston, and now Kaltsit, have all gone through a form of like death and rebirth. Doctor had the entire amnesia situation. It was like a one form of death, right? The existence of Doctor as we knew it at that point, pre-amnesia, was kind of killed off and reset, and he was reborn as our amnesiac Doctor that we know. Preserver goes through a very kind of similar thing. Preserver specifically has all of his memories wiped by Kaltsit, and then is sort of reborn then into Friston 3, right? Like his consciousness is saved, but without any of the memories and sort of any of the shackles that tie him to the previous civilization. Say for Doctor, the amnesia like clears the shackles to the previous civilization. And now kind of Kaltsit can also have that. Kaltsit can go through this same type of thing where there's like in Kaltsit's case, the death is more of like much more of a physical death, you know. We'll see how the memories are gonna work with her, obviously, once, you know, the story's out and so on. But it fits this theme that they've been going through with these predecessors. There's a mental disconnect, or like they let go of the past, of the previous civilization, sort of in a mental sense, but they all go through some form of death and rebirth to truly finalize that like letting go of what once was and fully being reborn as people on current Terra with current civilization. That seems to be a thing they're going for with a lot of these pre-civilization characters, these predecessors. So it kind of works here as well. Which is kind of cool, actually. I kind of like that. I like that, like, the sort of shared event, like shift event that these people go through. And yeah, then there's also indeed, Kaltsit might be like mortal and stuff like now and whatnot, so that's a whole thing as well, you know? And yeah, I'm interested to see what sort of the character changes will be. Well, because Monster's different Wonder. Monster's in a way like a fully new existence in kind of, you know, in that way, right? Monster had a rebirth when Kaltsit died. That was like a double deal. Kaltsit died, Monster was reborn, you know? Like born from it. M3 is still a whole question mark mystery, yes. We'll see, you know, what that is. And yes, indeed, I think I have a pure speculation. I think this whole death and rebirth thing might also end up happening with Priestess in some way, right? Like, if they're going for this theme for these, then could very well happen. And no, I don't think M3 is much closer to Monster than Kaltsit. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think there's fun implications. So I'm excited for Kaltsit Altar. Slightly early, a little early. I think they could have waited a little bit more, but otherwise, I'm excited. I'm for it. I knew it was coming at some point. It was very obvious at some point it was coming. It was mostly just the timing. Because, okay, I didn't even try to get the lines. Thank you, Kazo. Kal's line in her reel was, I will no longer question the meaning of my existence. At the end of the journey, an individual named Kaltsit has found herself. Speaking of Kaltsit as like a sort of separate, you know, entity somewhat. That Kaltsit at the end of her journey found something and she's taking over for that meaning, you know. So it does, that line also does indeed, that was the line that I was talking about where she was seemingly talking about Kaltsit in like a past third person type of thing, like not as her, referring to a different individual. And she's sort of instead taking the baton pass from that Kaltsit. Which obviously Monster did to an extent as well. Monster also took a baton pass as well. So, and then obviously, yeah, we're getting a Kaltsit comic as well, which we're probably going to get to see like a bunch of the previous cycles from the Kaltsit comic and stuff. That seemed to be what it was showing me. So yeah. So it's kind of like a factory reset a little bit, but obviously like elements of Kaltsit are still, you know, very much there because it's kind of a little bit how she was. And obviously the rebirth in this case for Kaltsit is a bit different than what her rebirth was previously through like the Gemini system with Monster. Now it's obviously a separated piece from it. And yeah, they can do cool stuff with like the sense of identity. In how they've been doing some sense of identity exploration with Monster as well. They could do more of it with Kaltsit. So yeah. We'll see how it goes, because indeed, interesting.